Hi everyone, my name is Nidhi and I'm a rising junior. I've been working on my project Raspberry Pi image recognition and I've just come to my first milestone. As a part of my first milestone, I finished setting up the Raspberry Pi, installing TensorFlow, downloading a sample machine learning model, and configuring that model to process images that are produced by my Raspberry Pi camera that I connected to the Raspberry Pi microcontroller board. So this is the microcontroller board, and then this is the Raspberry Pi camera. So now I'll show how it works. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, there's no image here at all. It's just blank. When I run this code, though, it's going to configure the camera, the Raspberry Pi camera, and then it's going to run the camera's functionalities, which means it's going to allow the Raspberry Pi camera to take a picture of whatever the Raspberry Pi camera is pointing at. So as you can see, I took a picture of a phone, and now I'm going to run tftest.py, which is where the machine learning model lies. And then you can see that in the terminal, it gives a probability of there being an iPod in the image, of there being a remote control in the image, and there being a cellular telephone or cellular phone in the image, which is all pretty accurate, as long as that's the only thing in the image of the Raspberry Pi camera. So then I thought that if the Raspberry Pi camera could take static images and process those images, why not produce a dynamic image? Meaning, why not the Raspberry Pi camera produce a live feed of whatever it's pointing at? So in order to do this, I had to change the code in controller.py. So as you can see here, I have a while loop. And in this while loop, by having this while loop here, the Raspberry Pi camera is going to continuously take pictures of whatever is in front of it. But each picture that is taken is going to have a 0.5-second delay between each time that the Raspberry Pi camera captures an image. So that essentially the Raspberry Pi camera can produce a live feed to our eyes. I also linked the machine learning model in this code so that whatever object the Raspberry Pi camera is pointing to in the live feed, it will also be processed by the model and some output will show up on the terminal. So now I'll show how it works. So as you can see, as I move the Raspberry Pi camera this time, the image on the right is also moving. So now you can tell that this is a live feed. So now I'm pointing it now directly at a phone, and you can see that in the terminal, it's saying that it's an iPod remote control, a modem, all of these things. Now I'm going to point it towards a digital watch. And now you can see in the terminal, it says with the highest probability, almost 90%, it's a digital clock, or a wall clock, or a stopwatch, or a digital telephone. So that's what the model can identify. And now if I bring a perfume bottle in front of the camera, you can see in the terminal with the highest probability, it's identifying this object as a perfume or essence and other makeup items. And now if I continue this live feed and point the camera at a golf ball, then you can see that in the terminal with the highest probability, it's saying that the object that it's seen through the camera is a golf ball. So at times it may seem a little bit inaccurate, but the model is still accurate in terms of identifying the object with the highest probability of being something. For example, it was able to identify the phone as the highest probability of being a cellular telephone. It was able to identify the golf ball with the highest probability of being a golf ball. Although it did have some other output, the highest probability how to correct image recognition. So this is how far I've come in the project, but I do have a few next steps that I would like to take. In my next steps, I would like to include a more significant hardware component like a servo motor, which will serve as a gate. What I plan to do with this is show a certain image or a certain object in front of the Raspberry Pi camera. The Raspberry Pi camera will capture that image and the model will process that image, and that image itself will serve as a password after it's been processed. And then, knowing that that password is correct, the servo motor will turn 180 degrees or turn based on how I code it. Thank you so much for watching this video.